room. And so I'm going to kick things off. We are going to record this session. So if you want to refer back to it down the road, we'll make it available to everybody. But welcome to everyone today to Alignable's Experts and Answers series. Today, we're going to tackle the topic of what financial relief are you entitled to? And I'm super excited to have a couple of experts from the Small Business Administration joining me today. So setting the stage on who's here with you today, myself, Eric Groves. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Alignable. My passion is all around my money stays local, and that's for another session. We could talk more about that, but I'm a huge proponent of small business, and just thrilled to be able today to have Nadine and Carlos joining us here today, both experts from the Small Business Administration. Nadine has been a friend for a number of years, wonderful, wonderful person. She's the Assistant District Director in Massachusetts. She focuses on business development today, but she's been with the Small Business Administration for 22 years. Formerly was a lead lender, relations specialist, and welcome, Nadine. Wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Eric and Alana.
My pleasure. And we also have Carlos Hernandez here, who is a lender relations specialist. Carlos has been with the SBA for over 9 years, just passed an anniversary in December, and he works with lenders and financial institutions. So two great resources for us all to listen to today. So what are we going to talk about? Well, first, Nadine and Carlos are going to take us through a little overview of where we are today. And some exciting new news just came out yesterday. So we're going to actually usurp a little bit of our slide deck right at the beginning, and they're going to tell you a little bit about that. They're going to walk you through all of the programs that are available to you through the Small Business Administration, and how to take advantage of these programs. You can also, at the end, they'll have a slide where different ways that you can stay informed. And then we're going to allocate a big piece of the time here today to answer your questions. So you'll notice at the bottom of the page is a link where you can put Q&A. If you ask your questions there, we've got Abby on our team who's going to go through all of those and try and surface up as many different topics as we can. I also have a ton of questions that were asked to me via email, and I've kind of pulled those together. So we'll add those into the discussion stream as well. So without further ado, let me hand it off to Nadine and Carlos to chat a little bit about what's been going on in the world of PPP and relief.
Eric and Alana, good morning, and all participants. Thank you so very much for joining your local Massachusetts Small Business Administration this morning to talk with you about the SBA COVID-19 economic aid and funding options that's available to our small business owners. As you know, Treasury created the PPP program, and SBA has been tasked to implement it. And here in this new administration, there was some breaking news yesterday where some changes were made to the PPP program. And I want to turn this over to Carlos right now to talk a little bit about that breaking news before we go quickly through the slide deck and then get into some Q&As.
Hey, thank you, Nadine, and thank you, Eric, and the team there at Alignable for putting on this this presentation, because it's very important, and there's a lot of questions that we receive from small businesses who may not be aware, or they want more information about it before they take that step. And just today as well, one of the latest updates was released from the office, which makes the timing really well. So as of February 21st, they're here, and for this round of PPP, there have been over 42,000 approvals just here in Massachusetts alone, and nationwide there's over 5,000 lenders participating for approvals for over 1.9 million. So over $140 billion of the 285 has been allocated, which means there's still plenty of funding to go around. So if you are hesitant, may not think about participating, now is there's no better opportunity than now to request a loan. But before we do that, so there has been some updates that came out just yesterday. So the timing is perfect. So I know the administration here are taking some steps here to further go out there and reach the underserved community when it comes to, low to moderate income areas, rural areas, urban and underserved areas. So with that, you may have seen on the news or your local station talking about some changes coming to the PPP loan. Well, those changes will start in, I think, tomorrow. So beginning, I believe tomorrow, there's going to be a few updates coming. So one of them is going to establish a 14-day exclusive PPP loan application period for businesses and nonprofits with fewer than 20 employees. So that's a big change. And based on a call yesterday, they were saying if you during this period, if a business owner 20 employees or more, submits the application, it won't be allowed during that 2-week period. So this is really going out there and helping out those small businesses with either sole proprietor or fewer than 20 employees. There's also going to be some changes here to allow different sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed individuals to receive more financial support by revising the funding formula for these categories. So if you notice right now, you go to our website, you pull down the how to calculate form, you will notice there's a formula right now for Schedule C applicants. Well, that's going to be updated. And I think it's a big change that's coming, and it's going to be something that if you haven't applied, that it'll give you a more reason to apply. So be on the lookout for that. I can't put out the information yet because we haven't seen the exact rules, but big changes coming to that, and it's going to be lining up with the farmers calculation. So if you take a look at that, it gives you a preview of what to expect. So that is coming out tomorrow. Also too, there's going to be the elimination of a restriction right now for any small business owner with prior non-fraud felony convictions. So that's going to be a big change there. That's going to be allowing you, if you have been convicted of a non-fraud felony, to apply and to still receive funding. Also, another update is going to be, it's going to eliminate the PPP access restrictions on small business owners who have struggled to make federal student loan payments by eliminating the federal student loan debt delinquency and default as disqualifiers to participate in PPP. So we have seen a few of those that where, for whatever reason, the applicant is behind on student loan payments, which makes that small business ineligible. So they're taking that restriction out there. So that should allow some more small business to participate. So, those are just a few changes that are coming. So be on the lookout for that. And, I'm sure as a follow-up, we can send more information as the details roll out. So with that, I'll pass it back to Nadine.
Carlos, thank you so very much. Appreciate you providing that update and the breaking news that we really cannot talk about yet because we haven't seen the rules. So, Eric, let us go to our next slide now that we know where we are. Next slide.
Sounds
please.
good.
Okay,
Okay, I'm on the loan programs. Yep.
Mhm. It did not change on my screen for some reason.
Okay. Well, Maureen, are you seeing the slide with the economic funding? So we're on the loan programs and grant programs, the summary of the PPP.
Okay, not a problem. I do have it here. That I could, okay, there we are. So we want to talk about the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP that Carlos just talked about. We want to talk about the debt relief on current SBA loans, small business owners who have current SBA 7A, 504, and micro loans. We want to talk about the economic injury disaster loans, IDA, and targeted IDA advance, as well as the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, the SVOG. So again, we're going to talk quickly about those and try to help you to understand. I think many of our small business owners already know about many of these programs or have utilized some of these programs based on some of the pre-questions that I have seen. So maybe please go, well, let's talk about Paycheck Protection Loan Program. Next slide, please.
I'm on that one. Mm-hmm. I'm on that Paycheck Protection one.
And while you're getting to that slide, as we know that it is supposed to be a forgivable loan. When you apply for this, this is a loan, and it is supposed to be 100% forgivable when it is used as intended. With that being said, some of the covered eligible expenses are supposed to include payroll costs. It is Paycheck Protection Loan Program. And so payroll costs, the rent, the mortgage, interest, the utilities, operation expenditures, property damage costs, as well as suppliers costs and PPE. So that is what some of those eligible expenses are supposed to be used for. So last year in April, that was when the first draw began. The first draw began on April 3rd, I believe, 2020, for those employers who had 500 or more employees. And then on April 10th, it was open to sole proprietors, gig workers, and other entities. So the PPP loan, you needed to have been in business. This is very, very important. You needed to have been in business as of February the 15th, 2020. And at that time, you had 8 weeks to use the funds once you were approved for the PPP, and then it was moved later to 24 weeks. Now you have this length of time between 8 and 24 weeks after disbursement for the first draw of the PPP. And many borrowers who had that can request an increase, which would then be the second draw. Now, PPP is supposed to sunset on the 31st of March, 2021. So we don't have that much longer, although, you know, Congress could appropriate additional time if there are still funds available. Prayerfully, with these changes that Carlos talked about, maybe by March 31st, because we're going to have so many of our more vulnerable businesses that's now in the game. Maybe there will not be any money left, but we shall see what we shall see. Next slide, please. Carlos, is there anything you're needing to add at this point?
Yeah, absolutely, Nadine. So with that, if, you know, for someone who has not participated yet, you're going to hear some terms here throughout this presentation. We're going to be calling them first time draw, second time draw. So first time draw is going to be anyone who has not participated at all. So you have not approached a bank, you haven't signed any type of loan documents. First time draw, that's you. Second time draw will be somebody who already received a PPP loan, you know, used it up for the eligible purposes, and now is returning back for a second loan. So you're getting a, you know, a second bite at the apple. So you will hear these terms thrown out through this presentation, but you know, the big takeaway is either first time draw or second time draw. The uses that Nadine covered, it applies to both of them. So you can use it for payroll, rent, utilities, and the new expanded eligible proceeds to include like PPPE. If you have to modify, say, your restaurant to include some barriers there, or so protection for your employees, those are now included as eligible costs. So that's, you know, that's some big changes there. Also, too, we do talk about covered period here a lot. 8 weeks, 24 weeks. What does that all mean? So, right, so pretty much the reason why that's important is for you as a small business owner, you receive, the day you receive the money from the bank, the day it's deposited into your checking account is the day your covered period begins, right? So that's day one. From that point on, you have either as little as 8 weeks or up to 24 weeks to fully utilize these funds. And what the reason why that's important is because when it comes to forgiveness time, only expenses and costs paid or incurred during this covered period is eligible for forgiveness. So that's why, you know, you'll be keeping, you know, tabs on your documentation, receipts, payroll for those costs that were incurred or paid during that covered period. So as little as 28 weeks up to 24 weeks to use these funds. So plenty of time to go out there, because we do sometimes get questions from small business owners who may be seasonal and say, you know, I'm not open yet, or maybe, you know, I probably won't open for another month or so. So you do have that flexibility to use that funding for a longer period of time. So that's another question for you there. So also too, these loans are, you know, like Nadine said, it's it is called the Paycheck Protection Program. So the intention of this program is to, pay your employees and keep them on the payroll. So with that being said, there's a 60-40 split that SBA is looking for. You can certainly use this entire loan amount for payroll, right? 100%, that's not a problem. But since the intention is for payroll, in order to receive full forgiveness, so this is 100% forgiveness of the loan, at least 60% of this loan must go to your payroll costs. So 60%, and the remaining 40, you can use it for the rest of the costs as Nadine outlined, like utilities and rent and things of that nature. So another question we received is what? Yes.
I was going to ask, one of the questions that we received was for self-employed folks. How do they track using the money and documenting payments what they're making to themselves? Is it something where they just have to keep a ledger of all of that? Or how do they make sure that they're going to qualify for forgiveness?
That's a good question, Eric. We receive that a lot. So it depends on the borrower, and we've seen from the banks recommend something from, write a check to themselves. How about when they do transfers to themselves to write in their, payroll, PPP. So just to have a method to document at the end, say, hey, you add up these transfers, it includes my loan amount, or I issued myself a check at this loan amount. So the big thing too, as well, is now those proceeds that we mentioned earlier now extend to a sole proprietor as well, so they can use it for payroll costs and also for PPPE and all those others. And that's still now eligible. So that's a new change that comes to that. But no, good question. Good question.
Fantastic.
And also the Schedule C, the profit and loss statement, the Schedule C. Speaking of that, Carlos, can we discuss? You could not have taken a loss and be eligible for a PPP. Is that correct?
Well, previously, if you were a sole prop and you were a Schedule C, so the way that calculation is based is on your Schedule C line 31. So the way the rules are currently written, it says that in order to be eligible, you have to show a profit in that line. So right now, that restricts a lot of small businesses who, for whatever reason, could be a legitimate reason. They, suffered a loss last year, maybe a drop in sales, or whatever the case may be, and they're not eligible for PPP. But with this new recent change that's coming, we should see some of those businesses that have seen a loss been able to participate based on the updated changes. So that's a good question, and I would definitely be staying tuned to the SBA website, or with Eric and his team, to find out when those guidelines come out, to see if your eligibility does change.
So just to reinforce that, if you previously were not able to apply for the PPP because you were showing a negative number on line 31 of the Schedule C, going forward, that may change, and it may be using a line item like number 7 in this Schedule C, where it will provide a lot more flexibility. Another question, Carlos, Nadine, is if I take my loan and 60% of it is applied to payroll, can I use the 40% for things like marketing my business or tax preparation type expenses and still have them forgiven, or do they have to fall under that debt bucket?
That's a great question, Eric. And sorry to cut you off, Nadine, here, but it's so the PPP loan is very specific on what you can use it for. So it outlines, payroll, you can use it for utilities, you can use it for rent, mortgage expense, PPPE. But outside of that, just say your general, day-to-day operating expense wouldn't be eligible, only if it falls under one of those categories.
Gotcha. Great clarification. Thanks, guys. Okay, well, I'm going to then jump into the slide on second draw loan eligibility, because there are a couple of things in there that people have a lot of questions about. One is the 25% reduction in gross receipts. Does it have to be a calendar quarter? Can I use different months as long as it's 3 months to 3 months? As well as, do I have to have used the first draw in order to go and apply for the second draw completely? So, take it away, guys, and dive into that topic.
That's a good topic too. That it is something too we were seeing a lot of questions on. So second draw PPP loan. So this is anybody now who you're coming back for a second bite at the PPP apple here. So and so unlike the first time draw PPP loan, in order to receive a second time draw PPP loan, there's two primary bullets you must meet, right? One is going to be you have no more than 300 employees. So that's one principal requirement. And the two is you can demonstrate at least a 25% reduction in gross receipts between comparable quarters in 2019 and 2020. We received a lot, as you can tell, a lot of questions on this. And the headquarters has clarified that they're calendar quarters. So you can't pick any 3 months. It must be a calendar quarter in order to show that comparison. So we don't require you to, we don't pick which calendar quarter, right? We leave it up to the small business to make that determination, but it is a requirement for a calendar quarter in order to receive that. And now another question too is, well, we know from first time draw PPP loans that were approved back in April, May, June, July of last year, their covered period is over. Probably 24 weeks has probably lapsed now. They used up the funding. They're coming back. That's not a problem for them. They can, use a second time draw loan and, get the money and, go forward and succeed. So where it comes a little bit, I guess, scheduled tricky is, if I want to describe it a little bit, when it comes to now applicants who received a first time draw loan in January. So when the program relaunched, you had not approved, been approved the loan, you're going to the bank for the first time, you got to approve that loan. And now you want to know whether or not I can come back before March 31st and secure a second draw PPP loan. So that's right there where it's more of a timing issue, because what the SBA is saying is when you do apply for that second time draw, you have to say that first time draw loan you've either used up or will use all of the proceeds for eligible expenses. So with that, the clarification they provided is that, what they mean by that is the covered periods cannot overlap. So if I receive a loan, the program opened, let's say January 11th, I received a PPP loan, my covered period at a minimum has to be 8 weeks. So from 8 weeks from that January is when that covered period ends, and then I can be approved a second draw loan. So I guess the time is going to be, if I received the loan, 5 weeks ago, and I receive one, I get approved today for a second time draw, my covered period begins the day I receive that the second draw funding. So those covered periods were overlapped. That 8 weeks had not lapsed because I only got approved just 5 weeks ago. So that is going to be a little bit, it's a little tricky trying to get that done, but there is some clarification coming from headquarters that they're going to discuss this, because also a lender only has 10 days to get this funding out. So they can't approve your loan and have it sit there until your cover period is over. So that's another.
So Carlos, we've had a number of questions from folks who say they've applied for the loan and their banks are kind of sitting on their application and not responding back to them. Do you suggest in that situation that they simply go to another lender? Because it seems like, some of, and I know you guys can't name names and pick names, but I can. Some of these major money center banks are, not doing what they should be doing, in my mind, in terms of processing these loans. And there are a lot of local regional banks as well as online providers. If you've submitted an application and the bank is sitting on it or not being responsive, is it okay to go and apply somewhere else as long as you're just not taking both loans if they both get accepted, and just sort of say, I'm going to just double my odds and make sure that I'm going to get my application submitted?
So Eric, that's a good question. So I just wanted to throw just a quick 1 minute background on that. So the previous rounds back in 2020, when those loans were being approved, the lender was able to use SBA's internal online system. They were going to, take that information, submit it to the SBA, and the loan number approval, which is the key to this whole operation here, returns, almost instantaneously, right? But now that whole website or site has been updated. So now SBA has set up a brand new portal to get these loans originated, and now those originations now are going through a series of screenings when it comes to different databases and registries. So what's happening is, we found originally there was an issue with different, so depending, like say I applied first time under Carlos Hernandez Inc. I changed my name now, and I am now Carlos, doing business as Nadine and Carlos operations, right? So the system wasn't updated, so it's causing an error there, or maybe my tax ID number changed. So we're finding a lot of that, but they have made some updates, and that's improving the flow. But we are finding that sometimes there's some different error codes that are holding up the approval, and also tax ID numbers where it was transposed or put in a different format the first time around. Now the changes have to be sent up to our servicing center, and as you can imagine, they're seeing a huge increase of these. So it's taking time for that to come back and get updated, and once updated, it can be approved and pushed back. So to I guess that's a long answer to say, should they go to another, start going to another and applying at multiple places? It could delay the process, because what one error issue is, it'll say, you got an active app somewhere else or an active approval somewhere else, and now that new lender can't push it forward until that other one has been resolved.
So how is a business owner to know whether, really where the logjam is? Right? Is it at my bank? Is it that there's something happening in the processing of the loan through the SBA, and really have confidence that the process is moving forward? Is there certain things they should ask from their bank to sort of see some type of submission number, some kind of, we're standing in the queue type of thing, or, how do they know where they stand?
So Eric, I'm gonna give you a secret, and it's not one that you're gonna. That's not one that you're gonna find. You will find shocking. So previously, if a small business had an issue, or they wanted to see where their app was, they could give us a call, and we can go in there and actually see it. This time, the agency did not give the district office access to these portals, so we can't even go there and see it. So the only reasonable thing that a small business can do is to reach out to the bank, and if there is some type of issue with it, they should be able to tell them, we have an error code and now each error code now has a reason why they haven't been able to submit it, and only the bank can give them the update. We can't.
Okay, I want to keep going because I know we've got a lot to cover, but I guess one last thing on that is, if my loan has been submitted to the SBA and there are no error codes, how fast is the process for me getting approval today? Is it still 2 days, or?
So depending on how the bank has it set up, because depending on the bank, right, and the resources, some have a portal set up online, which they're using a third-party vendor to process these applications. Some, the small business, the actual bank is processing the application, so they're manually entering these in at the bank. So depending on what method they're using, the turn time is relatively fast. And one thing to keep in mind is, once they receive that approval, the lender has 10 days to get that money out per the regulation out to the small business, and they have to report these to the SBA. So you will be able to see if there's some type of trend or pattern of loans being submitted or dispersed past that 10-day requirement. Gotcha.
Okay. Well, let's keep going on. We were on the slide of the application process. And there's some great resources we'll put up at the end about finding a lender on the SBA website. There's a lot of resources, Lender Match, and other resources that you can find there. There's applications, links to the applications. We also have all of these up on our resource center. But let's jump into some of the discussions around the PP term loans and maturity of these.
Right. So one good question here is, especially if you are a a borrower, you received a first draw PPP loan, you're coming back for a second draw loan. One question we always receive is, well, has my loan have to been already forgiven or submitted for forgiveness before I apply? And the answer is no. You can have the money outstanding and still, go and approve and, apply and get approved for a second draw PPP loan. So that's, big question we'll receive. So this right here are the loan terms for the loan if it doesn't get approved, fully forgiven. So let's just say, for example, you used it for a small piece on something that was not part of the eligible costs.
Yep.
Exactly, for your marketing expenses. And they're saying, that $100 is not going to be forgiven. Or let's say you didn't meet a certain threshold and you have money left over that you didn't, use on payroll. And it's at the end, it's not forgiven, right? Because you didn't allocate it, you didn't use it on anything. So let's just say $200. You're left with the $200. You submit it to the bank. The bank then reviews it. They send it to the SBA. SBA reviews it, and then they make payment to the bank. And then any remainder is now left to the small business owner to repay back to the bank. So this brings us to this slide. So what this means is, if it's not forgiven, so any balance that's remaining, it's a fixed interest rate of 1% that's non-compounding and non-adjustable, right? There's no fees or prepayment penalties with this, and it's a 5-year maturity. So any new person now that received the loan, it's a 5-year maturity, and if it was approved prior to June 5th, 2020, then it's 2 years. But the small business can negotiate with the lender to extend that to 5 years. So if you will go right now today to get approved for a loan, it's going to be 5 years out the gate. And then the lender will be notifying the small business, what's the next payment due date and the term of that remaining balance. And then let's just say one other question would be, there's no requirement for collateral or personal guarantees. So these are non-recourse loans. You'll notice that the application and the loan note is really, it's very minimal, but what you're filling out, as far as, notes and guarantees.
Sounds good. So let's talk about the loan forgiveness process in terms of, I know there was a simplified application for loans under 150,000, and the vast majority of our members, that's sort of the sweet spot for them. What's the process for applying for forgiveness, and how long does it take?
So no, that's a good question, Eric. And it's one that a lot of small businesses right now are saying, hey, I heard some new changes. What are those changes? So big thing is right now, the forgiveness process begins with the small business and the lender. So some lenders have a portal now that you can go and submit your information online through their portal. Others, you receive it manually. Totally depends on the lender's doing. So first, before you would start, I would check with the lender to ask them, how are they receiving these forgiveness applications? So that's one. But after that, there's 3 primary forms that are available to a small business for forgiveness time. The big one right now, it's in the forefront, it's capturing the attention of all small business owners, is the 3508S. And the reason why is that is a streamlined forgiveness application form that is available to any small business owner that has a PPP loan of $150,000 or less. So what this means is it's only like 2 or 3 pages. So when I say streamlined, it is really streamlined. It's 2 to 3 pages, and 1 page is just, you're certifying, you're initially in the boxes. And what this means is now you as a small business are certifying that you use the funds appropriately, that you make the right calculations. And now, instead of submitting your payroll reports, your receipts, your rent checks, you're still going to keep all that, but you're going to keep that on file in your business, and you're only submitting the application to the bank. Then the bank reviews that forgiveness application, then submits it to the SBA. For this form and for all other forms, the way the process works is the bank, once they receive a forgiveness application from the borrower, they have 60 days to do a good faith review, to review the documents, make sure everything is correct. They submit it to the SBA. Then the SBA then has 90 days to review it and then pay the bank the forgiveness amount. And then any remaining balance is then communicated to the small business owner, which then follows the slide that we just talked about earlier.
Gotcha. Well, I'm sorry to keep rushing this, but I'm going to keep us going through this process because I know the EIDL, the big confusion around EIDL is this sort of the two pieces of EIDL, the grant that was available previously for $1,000 per employee. People wonder, is that still available today? And if not, okay, they get that. But then what is the EIDL in terms of as a resource for a business owner, and is it still available to me?
Eric, that's a great question. I'm going to come back in. It's Nadine. So the grant, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Grant Advance, that's what it was called on the front end. All of those funds were dispersed as of July. Was it July of last year, Carlos, where the Small Business Administration was permitting $1,000 per employee up to 10 employees. So you could not get any more than $10,000. And those eligible small business owners were able to get the EIDL advance without having to accept the EIDL loan. So those dollars are just gone now as of July. And so the Economic Injury Disaster Loan is still available, but the advance is not available. And you are able to use those proceeds for working capital, operating expenses, health benefits, rent, utilities, fixed debt payments. Now, the PPP and the EIDL cannot be used for the same purposes. The PPP is a loan that you have to acquire through the bank. The EIDL loan, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, is an online application on the SBA website. And for those individuals that got this back last year, because this was supposed to sunset on the 31st of December, 2020. However, it's been extended to December 31st, 2021. And so on the application, you were able to check whether you wanted the advance and the loan, or the advance or the loan. That is no longer, the application has been updated, so that advance is no longer available, but this is a loan. And for small businesses, the terms are 3.75%, for nonprofits is 2.75%, and they are 30-year loans. They are 30-year loans.
So going back real quick on the forgiveness stuff, we had a quick question on where can I go to find the forms for forgiveness? Is that right up there on the SBA website?
When you go to the SBA website, all of these COVID-19 economic relief information and FAQs are there on the SBA website.
Along with all the forms. Yeah, that's good.
It's
a great resource if you haven't been there.
And the one thing I wanted to incorporate here is that on PPP, that was created by Treasury, who IRS is under, and SBA is implementing that program. So this is what I like to call open government. That was a collaboration between Treasury, the Department of Treasury, as well as the Small Business Administration. And yesterday, when we had the breaking news about the changes, it was, again, an agreement between Treasury and the Small Business Administration before the president announced these changes that were coming up to that. So I work for the United States Small Business Administration, but I do say, look at Treasury's website, because there are those interim final rules that are there. There are FAQs that are there, and it is incumbent upon the small business owner to read what it is that they are perceiving that they need and what it is that they are signing up for, whether it is a loan, whether it is the EIDL loan, whether it is PPP that is supposed to be a grant. when Carlos was speaking earlier, and I was thinking about the fact that when I came here 6 years ago from the metropolitan DC area, I came here from servicing and liquidation, and we're talking about government dollars, which means accountability and transparency. And we have used the term, Carlos and I both, as well as you, Eric, about eligible use of proceeds. So, Carlos has indicated that if you used $100 or something for an ineligible expense, that is not going to be forgiven. So just keep those things in mind. But the EIDA, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, is a direct loan through the Small Business Administration, not through a lender. The application is on the SBA website. And so there is information and there are FAQs. I believe there's a 9-page FAQs that help the small business owner to understand what it is the SBA wants and is looking for. Previously, the EIDA loan program had a maximum of $2 million, but during this economic disaster called COVID-19, the need has been so great that they had to make the maximum loans $150,000 because of such a great need. Now that other funds have been appropriated, small business owners are able to ask for reconsiderations through the SBA, through the disaster customer service, to attempt to increase those loan amounts. But you do have to look to see if you're a qualified small business, cooperative or agricultural enterprise with the 500 or less, or a private nonprofit.
Yeah. And so if one of the other questions we had was if they thought they had applied for the EIDL advance and now it's being treated as a loan, is there a process through which they can go to appeal that? Do they go to their local SBA office, or how does that process work?
So it's really strange because the Office of Disaster Assistance feels like a totally different agency. We have no access to any of their databases or any of that information. Now, those who got the EIDA loan were contacted, once their loan was approved, they were contacted by a loan specialist as well as a caseworker. Strangely enough, when the EIDA advance was being dispersed, the EIDA advance was showing up into people's bank accounts without an email or a telephone call. There was nothing but money just being dispersed in your bank account. So there was little likelihood of being able to confuse whether you were actually getting a loan or an advance.
Okay, but if they have a question, they at least have that contact point that they can go back to that was their loan person
Eric,
to talk to.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add to that too is, so if you have a small business owner that received an EIDL advance, $1,000, $2,000, up to the $10,000 amount, submitted their PPP loan for forgiveness, and then realized that that advance was deducted from them, so they were left with a balance, they should have received some type of statement or update from the bank, because what happened is after the economic aid bill was signed and placed into law, what it did is now it allowed a small business to receive both of the funding, so PPP loan and the EIDL advance. And just a little bit on that, because the way the CARES Act was written, it said that a small business could only receive one grant. So it was either the PPP loan is a loan, but once forgiven turns into a grant, or the EIDL advance, which was a grant. So a lot of small businesses started seeing that when they were applying for forgiveness, the loan was being forgiven, but then it was deducted the EIDL advance. So they were left with a balance, say $5,000 for that they have to pay back within the remaining term of the loan. Once the economic aid bill was acted, it removed that. So now the SBA was now going back and paying the bank and making the small business whole. So there should have been no balance left if that economic or that remaining balance was in fact due to the EIDL advance. So if there is a small business out there that says, hey, I have a balance that I'm paying the bank after my forgiveness application was approved because it was an idle advance that was deducted from my amount, then I would have them reach back out to the bank because they should have received the payment from the SBA, the bank, and now there should be no balance at the end of the day.
Gotcha. Well, we've got a few minutes left. Let's touch quickly on the shuttered venues. And really, what are the shuttered venues? What do I have to be considered shuttered?
The shuttered venue is for performers and entertainment industry. And you must have been in operation as of February 29th, 2020. And so it is for the performing arts and motion pictures. And I've heard something about attached seating or venues and things of that nature. But first of all, it's a grant. The most important thing in the world is a grant. And so I work in contracting, and we say here that it's not open yet, but you're gonna need a SAM profile. So any small business owner who is in the entertainment and the promotions industry that look this up and see that they qualify, they're going to need a SAM profile. And with a SAM profile takes anywhere from 7 to 21 days because you have to have your tax ID number, your cage code, MPIN number.
What does SAM stand for?
SAM is System for Awards Management.
Gotcha. So does that mean you're like a government contractor type thing, or?
It is a database for anybody who is wanting to do business with the government in the terms of contracts or receiving grants.
Great. So the place to start is that sam.gov registration to get started, and then stay on the alert of some of the resources that we're going to share with you. I'm going to jump right to that page because I think that's staying connected and having access to these resources is super important. The SBA.gov website, as Nadine pointed out, the Treasury website, all great resources. I'll add a couple of my own on Alignable, that we have a resource center where you can find a lot of information. And then also, if you want to go to Intuit's Aid Assist website, just Google Aid Assist. There they have an online form that you can go through, and it'll ask you a whole bunch of questions. And now it's not been updated, I don't think, for this latest information, but it'll tell you what you do qualify for and what you don't qualify for. Guys, one of the big questions that we heard a bunch is there's sort of these businesses that are in no man's land or no woman's land, where they were in the process of establishing their business in the fourth quarter of 2019, either spending to build out a facility or leaving their jobs, in the hopes of opening up a business in early 2020. They were in business before the February 20th date, but not really in a situation where they had generated revenue in past years. Many of these folks have applied for PPP, the EIDL, even some of them going and trying to get unemployment because they left their jobs, but they left it voluntarily, so they're out of luck. Are these folks really out of luck completely, or are there specific programs that they should be looking at where they have a better chance of securing some type of relief?
The Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I heard you say some of these businesses are in no man's land, but the Small Business Administration has 68 district offices across the country. And here we are in Boston, Massachusetts, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts did have some grant programs. I do not know what the city of Boston, most likely they did, but we're speaking from the federal level. The city and the state also had relief opportunities during this disaster, and it's incumbent upon the small business owner to find out what is available for them I'm going to turn this over to Carlos and see if he can add a little bit more to that, because we do have the dates ingrained, and you heard me talk about eligibility, transparency, and federal dollars. And so, okay, Carlos.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And so now when it comes, we can, I guess, look at it two different ways. When it comes to the PPP loan, and you were a first draw applicant, previously the guidance wasn't really clear on, a small business that was just recently opened up prior to February 15th and how they can receive funding. The new updated guidelines now include those small businesses that were, either open in either late 2019 or just recently opened in January, February of 2020. So a new calculation came out to allow those small businesses to participate. So I would definitely have them reach out and take a look at that calculation. And for the EIDL loan, now we did receive a lot of questions. Now we know PPP loan is very specific, so what you can use it for. EIDL loan, on the other hand, which is the economic injury disaster loan, which a small business can apply directly with the SBA at sba.gov disaster. So there's no bank involvement on the EIDL loan part. And one of the, I guess, key features of the EIDL loan is you can use it for everyday working capital needs. So your day-to-day operating expenses. Now, a question we received, last year during the beginning when they launched it for COVID-19 purposes is, what if I was a startup business, brand new, I haven't really demonstrated a lot of repayment ability because I'm brand new. It doesn't necessarily rule you out. It just has to, now you have to make a case to the SBA saying, look, this is what it could be your business plan, could be in your projections that this is what you intended to do. Now you've been impacted and, are, suffering from this COVID-19, and its impact on your operations. So it doesn't necessarily rule you out. It's just more of a, if you have been impacted, even if you were only open for a couple of months, I would encourage that, individual or business to apply.
Great insight there. And I love the idea of looking in your state and local level as well. One of the questions that I just noticed as I was reading through the questions coming in, I saw was, one of the big pushbacks is bankers not being responsive. And one question from an individual who said, they had applied, their lender has not really been all that responsive. They noticed that there was something inaccurate in their application and they want to go and fix it, but the lender's not getting back to them. Do you have any suggestions for, should this person try and contact their local SBA office to try and see, is there a way to kind of submit updated information? Or what do you do when you've sort of put your trust in somebody who's supposed to be pushing this application through the process and they're just totally unresponsive?
So Eric, what I would do is, I'll take Nadine's advice and go to find your local SBA office, because like, just for example, anyone from Massachusetts here, we have a great working relationship with all the participating lenders. So if there is a lender that is not responsive, we can reach out to that person and say, hey, so and so small business is trying to reach you or hasn't heard back from you. So we have a really good working relationship with our lenders, and I'm sure it's the same thing across the country with other offices. So if you go out, find the lender relations specialist, that's the title you're looking for, lender relations specialist. That's the individual that's in charge of, working with small businesses, credit unions, and small business through this process. So they, talk to those lenders day in and day out. That's like our primary client, is that lender, to make sure that they know the program, the use of the portals, and if they do have any issues, they can reach out to us and we can advocate on their behalf through HQ and other servicing centers.
That's a fantastic takeaway, and one that I think many people will be glad to hear. Certainly, the challenge of having an advocate, and people don't really know about their SBA offices. And if there's one thing I would want everybody on this call to understand, is this is a huge resource paid for by the government that's there to help small business owners. And yeah, they're inundated. They're working remotely in many cases but they do an incredible amount of work on behalf of small business owners. So get to know your local SBA office. Reach out to the local loan specialist if you're running into problems with that. and use them as your advocates, because it's just a tremendous resource out there for you.
Thank you.
Let's
Thank you
see.
so very much. Hey, Eric,
Yes.
one thing, a couple of things I would like to say is, in this conversation, Carlos Hernandez is the lender relations specialist here in Massachusetts. That's one of the reasons why I just be quiet and let Carlos talk, because we are talking about finance. We are talking about lending. And so that's one of the reasons. But Carlos is the lender relations specialist in this conversation, and I'm the business development specialist. And that being said, where we are still on this slide about the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, SAM.gov, System for Awards Management, it is imperative that they are in SAM.gov and they see Uncle Sam's hat in the left-hand corner, because if they get into SAM.com, someone is liable to ask them for $600 or more, or maybe even less, but someone will ask them for money. The registration in SAM.gov is free.
SAM.gov, not SAM.com.
Please, it is imperative. It is imperative that our small business owners know that. And this Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, they are going to be looking at the grantee application, not the contracting application. SAM has two portals for their database. One is doing business with the government for contracts, or doing business with the government for grants. So one, they need to be in SAM.gov, and they need to make sure that it's the grant application or database that they are attempting to complete. And if there is a small business owner that is going to be in this entertainment industry or promotions industry that believe that they may qualify for the grant, although it's not open now, please get into SAM.gov, because as you heard me say, you've got other federal agencies that's going to need to issue some numbers to you, tax ID number, IRS, and the CAGE code, which is going to be defense logistics. And for all of this to work collaboratively, like I said, it could take up to 21 days, anywhere from 7 to 21 days to make these things happen. And just remember, everybody all over the country is hearing what Carlos and I are saying to Massachusetts and others today. So there's a lot of people in these databases and portals.
Yeah, great point. So get out ahead on that one.
Please.
Well, that pretty much wraps up our time here today. I know we could probably go on for hours. And if you have more questions, please do go to sba.gov or on Alignable. We have a COVID relief support group with over 1,000 members talking about these issues. On the homepage, if you just click on find groups and type in COVID in the search box, you'll see one that says COVID relief support group. You can just click and join that group to continue the discussion. It's one we monitor ourselves, so we're constantly trying to find answers for our members who post questions into that group. So a great resource there for you. Let me take just a brief second to thank our wonderful guest experts, Nadine and Carlos. You've been terrific. We've loved working with you over the years, and look forward to continuing to, and thank you for all that you do in support of small business owners. And to all the small business owners out there that were participating today, thanks for your attendance. We are recording this, so if you want access to the full deck of slides and the recording, by registering for this event, we'll send out an email to you with links so where you can download this information and get access to the recording. Any closing thoughts, Nadine or Carlos?
One, you are able, all attendees are able to subscribe to the Massachusetts newsletter, to our website, which is sba.gov/MA for Massachusetts. And you will get 2 pieces of information each month, which is going to be our newsletter and our events calendar. But what you're going to also see are our resource partners, which are SCORE, the Small Business Development Centers, and our Women Business Centers. And these resource partners are providing free counseling to help the small business, virtually, of course, to help the small business owner to navigate through these programs and to help to make sure that their documentation is accurate. Carlos?
Yeah, I'd say for everyone who's a little hesitant or maybe thinking about applying for one of these programs, is to apply really, because you'll find out that it's not as bad as you think. There's not a lot of upfront paperwork that's going to be required from you, and with the new streamlined and updated rules for forgiveness, it should be a lot easier even on the forgiveness side. So I would definitely recommend that you do apply and take advantage of this program. And don't forget, the deadline is March 31st, as of today.
Thanks to all of you. We will also take the chat questions and go through them, because I know there are many that we didn't get to, and we will try and answer them in the COVID relief group. So again, please do join that group, and we'll try and get as many of these questions answered for you as we can. Be safe out there, and thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thank
Take
you
care,
for this
everybody.
opportunity. Bye-bye.